Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling Matthew chapter 1. Now, I know what you might be thinking, a genealogy, just a long list of names.
Right, it can seem that way on the surface.
Exactly. But our mission here is to dig a bit deeper because this list, it actually holds some really surprising details about Jesus' lineage and, importantly, about Joseph's role.
It sets the stage in a fascinating way. It's
Yeah.
much more than just a historical record.
It really is. So let's jump in.
Okay, so right away the structure kind of jumps out, doesn't it? Matthew lays it out so deliberately.
Yeah, you see those three distinct blocks, 14 generations from Abraham to David,
Hmm.
then another 14, David down to the Babylonian exile,
Right.
and then a final 14 from that exile right up to the Messiah. It feels very patterned. Why that number? Why 14 three times?
Well, it seems to be making a strong theological point. It's not just like random history. It suggests a kind of divinely ordered progression, almost like a countdown, building this clear pathway through history, showing Jesus' arrival wasn't accidental, but the planned culmination.
So the structure itself is part of the message. It's underscoring purpose.
Precisely. It's saying, pay attention, this is all leading somewhere specific.
Okay, that makes sense. But maybe what's even more startling, for me anyway, is who is actually in this list.
Ah, yes.
You expect male names in a patriarchal lineage, right? But Matthew includes 4 women, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and, well, Uriah's wife, Bathsheba.
Which is highly unusual for the time. And their stories, they're not exactly straightforward.
Not at all. They involve some very unconventional, even scandalous circumstances by the standards of the day. So why them? Why highlight these particular women?
It's a powerful inclusion, I think. It sort of challenges any notion of a perfect or pure lineage in the conventional sense.
How so?
Well, it suggests that God's plan, his narrative, isn't limited by human ideas of respectability or, who fits the mold. It seems to show God actively working through unexpected people, maybe even those considered outsiders or involved in difficult situations. It hints that divine purpose isn't afraid of complexity.
That's a really interesting point. It embraces the messy parts of history, maybe?
You could say that.
Yeah.
It shows grace operating in surprising ways right from the start of this lineage.
And speaking of unexpected paths, that brings us right to Joseph, doesn't it, at the very end of this long list?
Absolutely. His situation is unique.
Right. The text says Mary was pledged to him, basically engaged, and then she's found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit.
A huge crisis for him personally and socially.
And he's described as faithful to the law, yet he decides not to make a public example of her. He plans this quiet divorce, shows compassion, right?
Exactly. Tells you a lot about his character right there.
Oh.
But also deeply kind. And then his personal decision is interrupted.
By the angel in the dream.
Telling him not to be afraid, to take Mary as his wife, explaining the child is from the Holy Spirit and will save his people, and to name him Jesus.
And his response is just immediate obedience. It connects it right back to that prophecy, Emmanuel, God with us.
Yeah, the text makes that link explicit.
He wakes up and just does it. He takes Mary home as his wife. What does that act of faith, going against probably every social convention and personal expectation, tell us?
It's foundational. It shows radical faith and obedience are central to this story. Joseph actively steps into a divine plan that completely overturns his own life.
He legally becomes Jesus' father.
Right. By adopting him, he grafts Jesus legally into this Davidic lineage that Matthew has just carefully laid out. It solidifies everything, but through an act of pure trust in something unseen.
So, wrapping up our deep dive into just this one chapter, what are the big takeaways?
Well, first, that deliberate structure, right? The 3 sets of 14. It's not just a list, it's theology, showing a planned culmination.
Got it. Second, the women. Their inclusion is remarkable, suggesting God's plan works through unexpected people and messy situations. It broadens the scope.
Definitely. And third, Joseph. His quiet, faithful obedience in an impossible situation is crucial. He legally anchors Jesus in the promised lineage through an act of profound trust.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does. It shows a divine plan that's both meticulously ordered down to the generations and incredibly inclusive and surprising, relying on human faith and obedience even when it defies logic. It challenges our neat boxes.
It really does. Makes you think, about the hidden figures and unexpected turns in any narrative, even our own lives. Maybe the most important parts of the story aren't always the most obvious ones.
A very good thought to leave with. History, and perhaps divine work, often unfolds in ways we don't immediately expect.